This is CBC Here and Now.
It's framed my entire adult life. It's followed me into my relationships, into everything that I've done.
An outspoken advocate for victims of sexual abuse is suing the Roman Catholic Church and the priest who allegedly carried out that abuse.
The land border with the United States has reopened for non-essential trips for the first time since the pandemic started.
And now some are calling to drop the testing requirements upon returning to Canada.
When I got up into the bleachers soaking wet, I took my shirt off and wrapped the ball up in my t-shirt because, well, I figured they'd come and take the ball from me if they found it.
A soccer ball, a historic moment, and Canada's World Cup dream.
A piece of soccer history resurfaces as Canada is on the verge of its second ever World Cup appearance. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. We begin tonight with the community's outrage over a recent court ruling. The verdict in the Victoria Head murder trial brought forward some controversial comments from the bench. While handing down Steve Bragg's sentence, Justice Donald Burge said, quote, "There are times, thankfully rare, when good people do terrible things. This is one such occasion." Bragg was sentenced to life in prison for strangling the woman with a bootlace in 2017. The judge's comments ignited a firestorm on social media, including from one women's advocacy group who says those words bring no justice.
You know, we've got real concerns, I want to say specifically around the delivery of the sentence from Justice Burge. The comments made about Bragg just being a good person who did a terrible thing, we believe were negligent and even unconscionable. And we also echo the sentiment that have come from Victoria's family members who felt as though they did not receive justice in the sentence or in the delivery that we saw last week.
Bridget Clark believes those kinds of comments, like the one made by Justice Burge, dehumanizes victims. More on that story in about 20 minutes on Here and Now.
An outspoken advocate for victims of sexual abuse is suing the Roman Catholic Church and the priest they say abused them as a child. Gemma Hickey claims Father Dennis Walsh fondled, groomed, and subjected them to other sexual abuse. The case has been filed in the Supreme Court of Newfoundland and Labrador. Here Now's Chris O'Neill-Yates spoke to Hickey and their lawyer. Here's her report.
Gemma Hickey is no stranger to advocacy. This time, they are publicly putting their name to this lawsuit.
The cost of staying silent is too great for me.
Raised as a Roman Catholic in St. John's, Hickey alleges the abuse goes back to their childhood. They name the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation and Father Dennis Walsh, claiming Walsh abused them and the church did not protect them as a vulnerable child.
He was the person that I told everything to. I told him about my struggles with sexuality, my struggles with gender identity.
Hickey has been part of a national campaign to force the church to release the names of credibly accused clergy. That means they may not have been convicted, but that the church believes there is enough evidence that the abuse took place. Those names have still not been released.
I've tried to work with the church. I've been to Rome. I've met with cardinals. I've met with the highest officials within the church in this country. I've met with local bishops.
Hickey alleges they've endured physical and mental pain, suffering, and anguish as a result of the abuse.
These are very serious allegations of molestation and of egregious sexual crimes.
Will Hiscock is Hickey's lawyer. His firm has spent decades representing victims of sexual abuse by clergy.
The abuse of a priest has a particularly damaging impact on a person, and so those form part of this case as well.
It's framed my entire adult life. It's followed me into my relationships, into everything that I've done.
None of Hickey's allegations have been proven in court. In a statement to CBC News, the Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of St. John's, Peter Hunt, says they continue to work to ensure a fair and fulsome process and will not comment on individual claims. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, daytime highs today not too bad across the province. Let's take a look at those temperatures, reaching the double digits for most of the island, about 11 degrees in St. John's today, 13 in Marystown. Those temperatures in and along the coast saw temperatures a bit cooler, 9 degrees in Twillingate, and then up through Labrador, your temperatures either near or even a few degrees above zero, like the case in Lab City. So we have an area of low pressure off to, or that is affecting most of Labrador, but the one thing that I'll be watching over the next couple of days is an area of low pressure that's going to move in, and it's going to bomb out, and that means that a weather system, when it bombs out, will rapidly intensify and lose about 24 millibars in 24 hours. And it does look like this one will get even stronger than that. That looks like we'll see some strong winds with this one, even the potential for some rain, snow, and again, some areas on the Avalon could see some more snow. I'll break that down for you and have your full weather forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, for the first time since March of 2020, fully vaccinated Canadians can drive or take a ferry to the United States for a non-essential trip. But there's a catch. People returning to Canada will have to show a negative PCR test taken within 72 hours of their return. And the tests are expensive. One Canadian expert doesn't see the value in them.
Timing-wise, for people who are driving across the border for 24 hours, I'm not sure it really has much benefit. It would be much better for them to get tested after their return to Canada after some time, just to make sure they didn't get infected when they go to the U.S. Although that depends a little bit too on what you're actually doing there. If you're crossing the border to go shopping at a shopping mall, it's not really any higher risk than going to a shopping mall here in Canada.
Canada has loosened some border travel restrictions already. Fully vaccinated travelers who enter the country can skip quarantine, but so far the federal government has refused to budge on dropping the negative test requirement.
Well, here at home, Memorial University is changing its COVID-19 protocols. Starting next semester, MUN is doing away with its 100-student cap on in-person classes. It's also going to return to in-person instruction. Vaccination requirements are also changing.
Come January 1st, it's going to be fully vaccinated or you have an approved, documented human rights-based accommodation. The Human Rights Ground has come out with guidance on this, so typically it would be race, religion, medical conditions. The only ones that we know of that would exist right now are the medical conditions, very similar to the vaccine passport, and so that's, if any exemptions are granted or accommodations, would be based on those medical reasons. However, we're open to whatever other human rights grounds there could be.
Well, there are 9 new cases of COVID-19 in the province since Friday. 4 of them are in Eastern Health, 5 are in Central, and all are adults. 2 schools in Mount Pearl have had cases of COVID confirmed in them. The English School District wrote to families to say that people at Mary Queen of the World Elementary and O'Donnell High School have tested positive. Both schools were open to in-class instruction today, but they are closed to those who've been contacted by public health and told to self-isolate. There are currently 36 active cases of COVID-19 in the province, and 1 person is in hospital. Taxi fares are going up. That's pretty much certain, according to a Newfound cabs manager. Taxi companies are requesting the increase, asking the City of St. John's to let them charge between 20 and 25% more. So the proposal looks a little bit like this. Instead of costing $3.75 to start a ride, the base price is going to go up 75 cents to $4.50. And then once you're moving, it'll be $2.50 per kilometer, up 50 cents from $2 a kilometer charge right now. A ride from downtown to the airport, for example, will go from about $21.25 up to $26. Now, according to City Trials, that's the price that it'll be. Councillors will debate the proposal for this next Monday. The city isn't doing interviews about the proposal until then, but in the meantime, the taxi industry and a poverty reduction advocate are weighing in.
Well, it all came about a couple of reasons. First, the price of insurance has gone through the roof. It's up over 200%. Gas is up 50% over what it was the last time we had a rate increase. I looked it up the other day. It's $1.12 a litre. It's $1.60 now, and that's in 10 years. And just generally the operating cost of the companies, parts, car acquisitions, everything has gone up. We've been putting off a rate increase. We're actually discussing one a couple of years ago, and then COVID hit. And it was enough of a struggle to survive through the COVID crisis. But I mean, now the time has come. Unfortunately, we can't put it off any longer. The drivers are losing out, the owners are losing out. The costs have just far and away more than we can cope with. The drivers, most of them work on a commission basis, so they get a percentage of the fares. And if the cost of operating, like the gas, comes right off the top, with the drivers, the owner and the driver pays the gas half and half. But every increase in that comes off of both of their pockets.
Taxi drivers haven't done anything wrong. Cab companies haven't done anything wrong here. They've gone to city council and asked for an increase. The problem we have in this city is that city council over years and years and years has made decisions that hurt people living in poverty the most. And lots of us were hoping that a new council would make different decisions, and that hasn't been the case. So cut public transit, don't clear the sidewalks, cut Go Bus for people with disabilities, do all of those things, force people to have no choice but to take taxis. It's not the taxis' fault that their cost of doing business has gone up. It's city council's fault for giving people no choice but to have to take cabs.
Well, application is made to City Hall. They have to go through their process in passing the necessary, I guess, legislation you'd call it. And then after that time, the increase is put on the meter. We don't have a date to do it yet, but we suspect sometime the next month or two.
The Growlers came into Conception Bay South with a bang. You saw Anthony at the arena Friday night. Well, the team went on to defeat the Adirondack Thunder 4-1 in that home opener. Saturday afternoon, the team lost 6-4 before defeating the Thunder 5-0 yesterday. Well, staying with sports, some consider our next story to be the most iconic sporting event in the province's history, but not every moment feels momentous when you're in it. So enter Farron Penny.
Almost 40 years ago, Penny was 23 and heading to a soccer game with friends, and he had no idea that it would be the first and only time that Canada would qualify for the World Cup. He also never expected to walk away with a souvenir, one that would one day end up in a very special place.
Welcome to King George V Park in St. John's, Newfoundland. We are moments away from this very, very crucial match between Honduras, who will wear the white this afternoon, and Canada in their traditional red and white.
The place was full, the crowd was ecstatic, there was a party going on, I tell you. It was that many people, they had to put in extra bleachers. The fans were screaming and roaring, standing ovation when the team came out. It was deafening, the noise. It was incredible.
Is paying off. The Canadians just not allowing the Hondurans to get anything going.
It was pretty early in the game when the ball was kicked over the stands.
Ian Bridge clearing that into the parking lot over on the far side.
That ball will take hours to come back. They better have another one.
We were sat here in the third section, maybe about 4 or 5 rows up. I scurried down between the stands to the water's edge. I also see several other people running for the ball, so that was my deciding factor. Out I went into the river, crossed over, retrieved the ball, led it to Reeds. When I got up into the bleachers soaking wet, I took my shirt off and wrapped the ball up in my T-shirt because, well, I figured they'd come and take the ball from me if they found it. And again, not understanding the significance of it. And by then, a substitute ball was thrown in.
Getting back to the number of internationals, Maritiaga with 118, Toledo with 113.
All right, so here we are up in my shed now, and this is where I keep my ball. And as you can see, this ball has all the official markings on it. It's an official Adidas ball, and over here it says official World Cup ball 1986. It was only about 30 years later I realized the importance of that ball when I seen an interview with Dean Murphy, a local sport legend. And he had talked about the most significant memory in his time was that game when Canada had finally made it to the World Cup.
Corner kick, swings it in, near post, headed away, and it's in! It's in! Canada has got in front, 2-1!
I just about came out of my chair because I had realized that I had the game ball from that particular game. I wish I had known at the time, I wasn't so young, and ignorant to the facts. If I had known then, the ball would have probably been returned to him immediately, because this is a big deal. This ball is like a one and only. The first and only time they ever made it to the Worlds.
Davies is on it. Davies takes it away. 2v1s. Keeps it himself. Goal!
Obviously, there's a buzz again this year about the World Cup, because Canada is that close to getting back there.
That's a big one right there.
I enjoyed the ball. My friends have seen it. My kids kicked it around in the backyard for 20 years. It's had a different life than most World Cup balls would have. And I think it's time now for the rest of the world to see it. Send it back to the club. Eventually, hopefully, the ball will make it to its new home in the Soccer Hall of Fame. Of course, my other wish is that that ball gets into the hands of the players in the dressing room.
Checking his watch. And there he goes! The final whistle! Canada has qualified for World Cup '86!
You know, it's funny. It's almost like, you know, this was meant to be. This ball is coming back at this specific time, 36 years later, when nobody even knew the ball existed. I think that's a sign that if we can get this ball in the hands of the team, they can pass it around and use it as inspiration to take them to the next level. That's what I'm looking for.
Wow.
What a great story. Farron sent the ball away last month. It has to be authenticated, of course, before landing in the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame in Ottawa. And there are plans to display the ball alongside a plaque crediting Penny with the discovery and, of course, his donation.
Yes, they're also planning to send him some autographed Team Canada swag. Penny did have one ask, though. He requested the Hall of Fame send him a new ball to put in that fancy display cabinet he built for the original.
Well, some areas across the province saw double-digit temperatures. That is not going to stick around. In fact, we've got the next weather maker moving in, which could bring some snow, wind, and some rain.
The two boat-building brothers who've never forgotten their craft or the place they came from. The Allen Brothers, Sunday at 11:30 and Monday at 7.
Well, Ashley has your forecast just ahead, but first, let's talk about the weekend snowfall. It's still early in November, but those of us on the eastern part of the island saw our first snowfall of the season on Friday night. The snow began in the evening and continued into Saturday morning. So how much fell? Well, 18 centimeters of snow was recorded at St. John's Airport. We spotted a few families braving the winter weather to get outside to have some fun in the snow. One family was excited to be making their first snowman of the season.
Happy for the snow, and I'm also kind of sad because the reason we never had snow last year for Christmas was because there's too much in November. My favorite season was winter because I love winter. So we can slide and we can build snowmen and we have a snowball fight.
Well, whether you liked the snow or you didn't, it was a lot that fell on Friday. Let's take a look at those numbers. 18.4 centimeters of snow fell in St. John's. That actually broke the record for the day. The previous record was 11.9 centimeters back in 1964. And the other thing is, it's the earliest day of the year that St. John's had 18 centimeters on the ground. The previous to that was November 16th, 1955. So no sign of it anymore. Certainly this weekend temperatures climbed up and melted all that snow. Today, no different. It has cooled down a little bit out there, though, only sitting at around 8 degrees thanks to that earlier sunset. Those temperatures as you head towards Central are similar. 8-9 degrees, Stephenville similar temperature as well. And then up across Labrador, lost a degree in Lab City now, sitting at about 3 degrees this afternoon. And temperatures for the rest of Labrador hovering in and around the 0 degree mark. And we are seeing some snow up across Labrador as an area of low pressure starts to move in, and then that ridge of high pressure just to the south, keeping things quiet, but there is an area of low pressure to the south even more so, which is why we're seeing some of that cloud cover move in. But other than that, not a whole lot happening across the island, and that's really the story as we head through the evening hours and overnight hours tonight. Now, the northern peninsula will likely see some showers and then some clearing skies as we get through the overnight, but that chance of flurries will continue for most of Labrador, seeing some showers in Lab West, and that will change over to the potential for some flurries overnight tonight, and then eventually continuing with some periods of snow through the day tomorrow as well, and then maybe a few showers for the west coast of the island as we get through the overnight. So temperatures tonight pretty cool across the island, anywhere from 1 to 4 degrees, but low-lying areas could see those temperatures dip into the minus single digits. And again, once we see that the potential for rain showers ending for St. Anthony, that temperature should drop to about 0 degrees tonight. And then for Labrador, temperatures hovering near or a few degrees below 0 tonight. Now, as we head through tomorrow, another area of low pressure will move in, affecting mainly Labrador. That means some flurries to start for Lab West, and then eventually you'll see that potentially with some rain in the mix. And then showers and or flurries will work their way further east as well. The best chance of seeing the rain, more rain than snow I should say, will be for extreme southeastern Labrador. Anything north of that should fall as snow. Even northern areas of the Big Land will see snow as well. And then eventually showers will move in for the west coast as well as the northern peninsula, and then overnight we'll see those showers work their way towards central Newfoundland. So as far as snowfall amounts go, looking generally at trades to 2 centimeters. However, in the extreme northern areas of the Big Land, we could see upwards of about 5 centimeters, and even through the day tomorrow, another additional 5 centimeters, which could bring your total between 5 to 10 as we get into early Wednesday morning. So temperatures tomorrow will be in the double digits, it looks like, for the Avalon, with a mix of sun and cloud through the day. Winds generally light, so another beautiful afternoon. As you head just west of the isthmus, those temperatures should sit in the single digits, high single digits though, with a mix of sun and cloud. And then again, Marystown, anywhere really in the Burin Peninsula, we'll see those double digits. Similar forecast towards Gander with a mix of sun and cloud. Twillingate in the single digits, and Harbour Breton looking at a high near 9 degrees tomorrow. And then the better chance of that shower activity will be towards the west coast, with southwesterlies gusting anywhere from 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Some sunshine though down through Burgeo, and then 10 degrees for Port aux Basques. For the northern peninsula, you're looking at single digit highs, but again, that potential for a few showers through the day. And then north of Mary's Harbour is where we should see that transition from snow and then eventually rain snow into the evening hours, with, like I said, about 5 to 10 centimeters possible up through Nain, hovering around 0 degrees. And then the rest of the big land looking at temperatures between 2 and 5. However, in Lab West, those winds will be a little gusty, anywhere from 40 to 60 kilometers per hour. Once we get into midweek, that's when I'm going to keep an eye on that area of low pressure. I'll dig into that when I come back.
All right, thank you, Ashley. The reaction was quick and harsh. Following Thursday's sentencing of Steve Bragg for the murder of Victoria Head, the judge said there are rare times when good people do terrible things. Now, that remark sparked a backlash from people all over social media, including the St. John's Status of Women's Council. Advocacy Coordinator Bridget Clark spoke with the CBC's Daryl Roberts.
We've got real concerns, I want to say specifically around the delivery of the sentence from Justice Burrage. The comments made about Bragg just being a good person who did a terrible thing, we believe were negligent and even unconscionable. You know, judges hold a great deal of power, not only in delivering the sentences that they do, but also in shaping the social narrative around issues like gender-based violence and how we talk and think about missing and murdered women in this province.
So in his sentencing, the judge described this incident as one where an otherwise good person did a terrible thing, and as I'm sure you saw, that got quite the reaction on social media. What were your thoughts on that?
Those kinds of comments are significant. You know, they contribute to a really pervasive narrative around gender-based violence, one that dehumanizes victims, that undermines the high rates of violence in our province, and also a narrative that upholds a sense that women and vulnerable people are disposable. The narrative that those comments contributed to is one that's unjust, it's inhumane, and it's one that we wholeheartedly reject. The response from the community is incredibly valid. You know, the ripple effect of the sentence that we saw last week is one that is felt widely and deeply, most importantly, of course, by Victoria Head's family and loved ones who were in the courtroom to hear the words and the comments that were included in the sentence, but also impacts are felt across our community and our province. You know, these impacts are felt by everyone and anyone who's experienced gender-based violence, for those who've lost someone to gender-based violence, and people of marginalized genders everywhere who could interpret words like those to mean that their lives, you know, might be seen as collateral damage in someone else's rehabilitation.
Yeah, do you think Victoria Head and her family got kind of left out of the narrative here?
What Victoria's family has been saying all along about her life and the value of it is most important to the kind of coverage in the story. And like I said, the impacts we know of this sentence and the way that it was delivered are most importantly, we want to recognize that those impacts are felt by her family and her loved ones. You know, we recognize that the loss of a mother, of a family member, of a loved one, a beautiful person like Victoria, that loss just can't be measured by our criminal justice system. And our hearts are with her family, her child, and everybody who remembers her.
Slowly but surely, life is starting to get back to normal at Memorial University, and next semester there will be another step in that process. Joining me now to talk more about that is MUN's Chief Risk Officer, Greg McDougall. So before we look ahead to next semester, let's talk about how this semester went. Some classes were online, some were in person. How did students cope with it?
Students were incredibly resilient, but we know it's been a challenging semester. This was more of a transition term with still a lot of online courses, and so we're transitioning to more normalcy as we get back to a more normal state.
What will that transition look like?
So class limits of 100 are no longer going to be in place. The majority of classes are going to be back to in-person, very similar to pre-pandemic.
And how will that work in terms of like social distancing, that sort of thing?
So we'll be looking at traffic flow and how we manage that. We'll be keeping distancing when possible. Students will be wearing masks in classes, and we have the vaccine requirement. So we're very confident that it'll be a fairly normal semester, and you're seeing a lot of Canada transition into more normalcy in terms of, whatever's happening with the pandemic. It's kind of moving towards a more endemic state, hopefully.
How do you think students will be with heading back to class next semester?
We hope they're going to be excited about it. We've heard loud and clear that they want more in-person experiences, they want more events, they want more social interactions, they want the things that they come to Memorial University for, and so we're excited to be transitioning to that.
And what about the vaccination? You have to be vaccinated to be here unless you have an exemption. How has that gone over, and what's the vaccination rate like here?
So we're actually changing our vaccination requirements to align with the Newfoundland and Labrador public sector requirements for staff and students. So come January 1st, it's going to be fully vaccinated or you have an approved, documented, human rights-based accommodation.
Who qualifies for the exemptions?
Basically, anyone who meets the criteria from the Human Rights Act of Newfoundland and Labrador. So it could be any of the grounds like race, religion, medical conditions. However, as per the advice with the Vax Pass, the only ones we're sure that would get it would be medical conditions. No religion has come out and outright and said we are against vaccinations, so personal beliefs are not covered, but we would look at any of them on a documented case-by-case basis.
And this is a new thing, this has just changed?
Yes.
And what happens if you do have an exemption? Will you do online classes? What kind of accommodations will be made for that?
So if you do have an exemption, you'll be able to be on campus, unvaccinated, without testing. We're going away from the online type of accommodations.
And have you had many people looking for exemptions?
So out of our numbers that we have from this semester, we know it's a very, very small group, approximately 200 to 250 students, and we're hoping those numbers will change as the vaccine passport has become more commonplace for restaurants and bars and other activities. So it's a very small population when you're talking about 18,000 so individuals.
And what about the faculty and staff?
Yes, the vaccine requirements apply to everybody equally. Faculty and staff, we know we're dealing with about 30 to 40 individuals who do not meet the requirements right now, so we're working with them on their human rights accommodations and the documentation.
And how has the Vax Pass gone over on campus?
It's been an interesting experience, but it's been working really well. I think everybody kind of understands the benefits of it. It really impacts us in terms of the gym, in terms of the university center. The dining hall is exempt because there's no kitchens in the room. So we've been working with the various situations and working with students and staff as to how to best support it.
Well, Greg McDougall, thank you so much for this update.
Hey, anytime. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's not just universities that are easing up. Beginning today, the U.S. land border is open to fully vaccinated visitors. America is reciprocating what Canada did 3 months ago. For many, the wariness of long lines is somewhat cushioned by a sense of long-awaited relief. But there is a contentious rule still in place when Canadians return from their trip across the border. Alison Northcott has the details.
Before dawn, cars and RVs lined up at this border crossing. With traffic stretched along the highway, some travelers waited 3 hours in line.
I left home at 6 o'clock. It is 9 something. Usually I cross the border in 1 hour.
How are you feeling about the wait?
It's okay. We knew about it, so it's not a big deal.
And what brings you to the U.S.?
Well, the sun, vacation, relaxing, seeing some friends and partying a little bit.
Many of these travelers are snowbirds, heading to places like Florida for the winter, some for the first time in 19 months.
It's a relief. Yes, it is. We're in a way to go do some motorcycle.
Anticipation was high even for those on shorter trips.
Liberation. No, it's good. It's good. We've been dying to go down for a while.
Lauren Hedges in Windsor, Ontario is going to see her boyfriend in Detroit. He's been able to come to Canada since August. Now it's her turn.
This is the first time of me going there, which is like so good.
At the border in New Brunswick, another reunion in the works.
We have a son and his wife that live in North Carolina, and we're on our way to visit them.
How excited are you the borders are going?
Oh my goodness, I got goosebumps all over.
To cross into the U.S. by land, Canadians need to be fully vaccinated. Unlike air travelers, they don't need a negative COVID test, but they do need one to get back into Canada after their trip.
This group is calling on the Canadian federal government to drop the PCR test requirement.
Leaders in some border communities say it's a costly barrier that hurts tourism.
We can undo some of the harm that we've done by removing a redundant test that doesn't make us any safer. It just adds costs and encumbers people's visits.
Canadian public health officials say they're looking at the issue, but for now, that testing requirement remains in place. Alison Northcott, CBC News, St. Bernard de la Colle, Quebec.
I went to India, and I was there for 30 years.
Ahead on the show, remembering the incredible life of Annette Vardy.
Members of the Liberal caucus gathered for their first meeting since the federal election in September. Justin Trudeau opened the meeting by taking aim at the Conservatives and the failure of all of its members to get vaccinated.
Even as Canadians are continuing to get vaccinated at record rates, the Conservatives are actually moving backwards. More and more Conservatives are now stepping up to stand against vaccination, to stand against science, to stand against being there for each other.
Trudeau also praised his party's approach to climate change and promised to make progress on affordable childcare as well as other issues. There have been questions about whether the Liberals and the NDP are forging a formal working arrangement to ensure that Trudeau's minority government remains stable.
Well, Erin O'Toole is criticizing a caucus member for her comments about vaccines. Ontario MP Marilyn Gladue said COVID-19 doesn't pose the same frequency of risk in terms of deaths or disabilities as polio did 100 years ago. The Conservative leader said that sentiment spread uncertainty about vaccines.
All of our MPs that participate in the House will be vaccinated. I don't get into talking about the personal health situation of any member of Parliament, senator, or any Canadian. What I've tried to do since the earliest days of this pandemic is to promote vaccines, to make sure we answer any questions that people have about them and not politicize the taking or having questions answered about vaccines. I will continue to take that same approach.
Well, flags are flying at half-mast today to mark Indigenous Veterans Day, a somber event that recognizes the contributions Indigenous people have made to the Canadian military. Olivia Stevanovic has more.
A day of contemplation, reflecting on the contributions and sacrifices of Indigenous veterans, often overlooked.
One of the first people to come forward to serve in this country and to protect the country and to bring it to its freedom today.
More than 12,000 First Nations, Inuit and Métis people served in the Canadian military, despite facing discrimination.
They're forgotten soldiers
who overcame obstacles to enlist and faced impossible challenges in getting the support and financial benefits given to non-Indigenous veterans.
We fought together, we moved together, but when we come back, they seem to put us in a back seat. They don't want to recognize us.
That's an injustice that we have to acknowledge and we have to remedy.
One the federal government has tried to make amends through apologies and compensation.
It shouldn't be lost in people's minds how veterans were treated, that Indigenous veterans were treated.
Now, for the first time, the Canadian flag flies at half-mast on all federal buildings in their honor. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, to a different kind of remembering now. We are remembering Annette Vardy tonight. After 103 incredible years, she passed away in St. John's last week.
Yes, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Annette, or Neat, as some called her, in recent years. We were there for her 100th birthday, and she also shared her incredible lifelong love story with us, opening up about her young fiancé who went to war at 22 years of age and died before returning home. Now, Annette never married, saying she'd always wait for him.
It's a wonderful story. Major Annette Marguerite Vardy passed away peacefully last week with her family by her side. And in her honor, we'd like to share that story that Karen was talking about from 2017. We're going to share it with you once again.
He was a gentleman in every sense of the word. And I like gentlemen.
Her gentleman was 24-year-old Arthur Stanfield from Bonavista, a school teacher just like her.
He was a handsome young man, and I thought that I had the world in a shell. But we have to take life as it comes.
World War II, Arthur enlisted in the Navy, but before he went off to war, they made a promise to each other.
He came to the house to see me where I was staying, and he said, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "When you come back." And he said, "Will you accept a ring?" And I said, "Yes." So he knelt down and put the ring on my finger. It's still with me.
Arthur survived the war, but he died on his way back home to Newfoundland.
He visited his family in Toronto, and he was on his way to Newfoundland, and I was waiting, anticipating. He went out to Niagara Falls, and there was a boat capsized. He swam out, and he got 2 people, saved their lives, came back to shore, brought them back, and he died of a heart attack. I picked up the paper and I read the notice in the paper, and that's how I found out. And I felt very much alone at that time, although there was many people around. But I really felt like I was absolutely alone, no one to turn to.
So she turned to the future, her dream of going overseas as a missionary.
And I thought that we would go together. So I did say to God, I will go alone and do what I can. I went to India, and I was there for 30 years.
Neat became Major Vardy with the Salvation Army, a nurse in charge of the children's hospital ward in what was once called Bombay. That's also where Mother Teresa had an orphanage.
I would send a child to her, but sometimes they got sick, and she would send them back to us to the hospital.
Then one day, a sick, orphaned infant, a little girl named Leela, captured Neat's heart.
She was just a bundle of bones and not very pretty to look at. But if you look into anybody, there's some beauty there. So I saw the beautiful spot, and I adopted her. And I brought her up. She went to college. She got married. She has 3 handsome young men now. They have all been through university.
Generation after generation, and throughout it all, Neat kept her engagement ring close, wearing it on a necklace every day, an act of devotion that never wavered. She continued to love Arthur and only Arthur.
Still, just as fresh today as the day he asked me to marry him. I have never seen anybody that I've been interested in. Lots and lots of male friends. But right at the very beginning, I would make it quite clear that I wasn't interested. Not the least bit interested in getting married. Or anything else.
Arthur was truly the love of her life.
And he asked me to wait for him. I'm still waiting. If you make a promise, you keep it.
At this room.
There's a community in the Black Sheep.
I remember it vividly, actually, the first day I held sticks.
I want to capture the gigs. I want to capture the facial expressions.
Creating the song that you want to hear.
That made me feel better listening to that. And maybe I could write my feelings out and see how I like that.
It's really all about the music.
Well, we're already looking ahead to midweek, and that is when the next weather maker is going to move in. Looking at the area of low pressure starting to ramp up as we head through the day on Thursday. Let's take a look at the future tracker. This one, as it develops, is going to rapidly intensify, and we're going to see that pretty much start Wednesday afternoon. And we'll see the area of low pressure will start to develop, but it really intensifies as we get through the day on Thursday, and it's going to be a weather bomb, which means that the area of low pressure will lose about 24 millibars of pressure in 24 hours. In fact, this one looks like it'll lose even more than that. So as the system gets itself together, it is looking like the risk of some snow, even some rain-snow mixes through parts of Central and the Avalon, even definitely not out of the question on Thursday, depending on the track of the low pressure system. But the other thing with this one will be the really gusty winds. Certainly the further east you go across the island is where we'll see most of the winds, but still looking at that potential for sure. Even the Avalon looking at that risk of some snow again. Still a few things to iron out for sure on this one, but I will definitely be keeping an eye on it. And even as we head into Friday, area of low pressure, this is when it will be its deepest offshore, but that means we're still going to see some windy conditions with that as well. So certainly doesn't look like a nice Remembrance Day through Thursday, that's for sure. So as we head through Wednesday, though, not a bad day is till we get there. 8-9 degrees, right around where we should be sitting this time of year, with either cloudy periods or a mix of sun and cloud. Some showers along southern areas of the island, a few flurries in the mix for Corner Brook, and then we're still looking at that chance of flurries for Happy Valley Goose Bay, hovering around 2 degrees, with Cartwright hovering around 4, and either rain or snow. So for Thursday, I have either rain or snow pretty much across the island. Those temperatures between 3 to 5 degrees. And then for Labrador, the chance of flurries, you're generally going to sit this one out, though. You may see some windy conditions along the coast, but otherwise a fairly nice day for Lab City and -6. So once we get through that Friday, those cooler temperatures are going to stick around really even into the weekend. Temperature near 4 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud or cloudy periods through the day on Saturday for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. And then for central Newfoundland, by Friday, should clear out as that area of low pressure moves further away. Some showers will return on Saturday. Same thing for western Newfoundland with temperatures in the high single digits. And even those temperatures looking like they're going to climb even more as we head through the evening hours. So for eastern Labrador, some flurries both Friday and Saturday. And then same thing for western Labrador with some periods of snow possible for you through the day on Saturday. Had to share this photo, fall sunrise over Carbonear. Eugene always shares photos with us. This one is beautiful as well. Thank you for that. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
So calm and beautiful too.
Yes, Eugene Howell always sends us beautiful shots, and don't adjust your TV set. So sorry about that. There are a few technical glitches with that tonight with Ashley's forecast. The connection is a bit staticky there. So yeah, that's on our end, not on yours. Yeah. Sorry about that.
I sort of noticed in her forecast, Carolyn, Ashley's talking about how November 11th looks like it's going to be a bit dreary, which seems to happen a lot on Remembrance Day.
It does.
It's almost fitting in a way, but can't really complain about November. I don't know about you, but I found the snow was maybe in excess of what some meteorologists said we were going to get.
I was a little bit surprised when I looked out the window and it was like that thick. It was, yeah, a lot of snow.
Yeah, a lot of centimeters.
More to come for sure.
Okay, thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.